fight for Malaysian mothers to secure equal citizenship rights for their overseas-born children has become a deeply emotional issue. Why has the Madani government delayed action despite promising to address this in February 2023? Advocacy group Family Frontiers has led this fight, pushing for constitutional changes to grant women the same rights as men in passing citizenship to their children born abroad. But what impact is this delay having on families? Kini TV spoke to Family Frontiers President Adeline Adam Theo, who shares the emotional struggles these families endure and the pressing need for the government to finally deliver on its promise.
This proposed amendment has been bundled with other regressive propositions, right, which we feel can exacerbate the issue of statelessness in Malaysia, which we know is a very big issue, right? We see it every day. We would know someone who knows someone who's affected by this, right? So this has only made things a lot more complicated. But what we would like to call for is that while we are waiting for the amendment, the government, who has also committed to expediting all of the existing applications under Article 15.2, to continue expediting this, we would like to, send our thank you and appreciation to the Home Minister, because as of March 2024, we've had over 80% approval rates, over 3,900 approvals come through.
Adeline highlights flaws in the proposed amendment, but what about the real impact on Malaysian mothers and their overseas-born children? These mothers struggle to get their kids into local schools, where Malaysian students are prioritized. Healthcare has also been jeopardized as the mothers of foreign-born children have to pay an international fee that costs way more than the average Malaysian pays.
So when they go in, the school, depending on how the Guru Besar manages this, but you will have to go through Jabatan Pendidikan. You have to get your proper visa for your standard one. And what happens is that the enrollment is delayed, right? Because the school will prioritize all the Malaysian kids first, and if there is a spot for your kid, then your kid can go in, right? And we've seen mothers who have seen their children have their school enrollment delayed by up to 2 months, right? So all the little kids would have gone to school, and this poor child, will come in completely lost, already left behind, right? And this is a process that actually happens year on year. It's not that you go through this once in Standard 1 and you're done. No. The mother has to apply for this again in Standard 2, Standard 3, and onwards for their entire education journey.
The fight for equal citizenship for children born overseas to Malaysian mothers has been an uphill battle, even for those living abroad. We spoke to Pamela Ye, a mother of 2 in the UK, who has spent years trying to secure citizenship for her children.
I went back to see my mother. She had been in intensive care. If I didn't have the means to come back and pay the sort of fees I had to pay for my children, there was like a foreigner fee you had to pay in order to enter the country. So I had to pay that twice for 2 kids. I had to pay the quarantine fees for 3 of us. Then they had all these COVID tests. So their COVID test was twice the price of mine. So it's things like that. If I didn't have the means, my children wouldn't have seen their grandmother for the last time. And so that plays on my mind quite heavily. So in terms of education, so we lived in Malaysia from 2010 to 2014. My marriage broke up during that time. And when we lived in Malaysia, my kids were in international school, and I was working I was working kind of freelance. I wasn't working because my ex-husband had the full-time job. So when my marriage broke up, I had to make a decision whether I was going to return with him to the UK or whether I was going to stay in Malaysia. I could not afford to stay in Malaysia. I had no job. I had a freelance job. I could not afford the international school fees. My kids were not Malaysians. They wouldn't have been allowed into schools in Malaysia.
Public debate on this issue has grown over the years as more Malaysian mothers are affected, but some misconceptions remain. Why do some believe that children born overseas are mostly from wealthy families or mat saleh backgrounds and therefore don't need a Malaysian citizenship? The reality is much more complex.
Because we've seen mothers who give birth to their children overseas, they don't come from a specific social group, right? Or all these mothers, or kahwin mak saleh, or no, it's from all different racial groups. It's all from different social backgrounds. It's people who live in the town, the cities, and in the kampongs, right? We've had mothers who come from interior Sarawak, right? Or from Felda in Pahang, so and obviously in the cities, and it's not as easy as saying if you're pregnant, if you want Malaysian citizenship, you just come back to give birth. It's not that simple. Other challenges we've seen, and this one is quite a serious one, is that a lot of mothers are open to vulnerability to abuse. We've heard a lot of cases where sometimes marriages don't work, right? And there have been cases of Malaysian mothers who are based overseas, having to, been subjected to abuse, and they find it very difficult to leave the marriage because their children don't have Malaysian citizenship, right? The children has the citizenship of the foreign spouse, and because of that, they just hang in there, right? They just tahan, and this is not how we should protect our mothers who are based overseas, right?
Despite the uncertainty surrounding the future of children born to Malaysian mothers, Adeline emphasizes that public and international support has been crucial to their fight. But why should this matter to all of us? Adeline urges the public to get involved, reminding us that this issue goes beyond just mothers and children. It affects entire families.
Our call to the public is please stand in solidarity with the mothers, right? Because the law may not apply to you today, but it can impact, your daughters, your granddaughters, or any woman in your life that right? That's very important. Number two is to make sure that you use your voice as a voter, right? This is very, very important because the government only moves when the rakyat moves.
Stories from mothers like Pamela Ye reveal the emotional and practical struggles they face, challenging the myth that this issue only affects the privileged. It's a widespread problem, cutting across all backgrounds, and highlights the failure to treat Malaysian women equally under the law.
This is no doubt it's a no-brainer. It's time to do this. We're not second-class citizens. In my younger days, I lived and worked in Malaysia as well, so I contributed as well. So we're no different. And I think that is a no-brainer. That definitely needs to go through. And they've delayed it for far too long. The bundling of all the other amendments, it's regressive. It's going to create a lot of statelessness. There are a lot of issues in Malaysia around people living in the borders, in places in Sabah and Sarawak, where, or people living in the interiors who maybe don't have the knowledge or don't have the facilities to go and register their children. So, those sort of issues should not be bundled with this. It is completely regressive to bundle it. It's also completely regressive that we have waited so long to give Malaysian women the same right as men. That's all we're asking. We're not asking for anything more. We're asking for the same right. Malaysian men today can marry foreign women. Their wives can give birth abroad, and they never have to go through what we have to go through. They just walk into the Malaysian High Commission or embassy, whichever countries they choose to live in, and they register their children as Malaysians. That's all we're asking for.
As the push for citizenship equality continues, public support and international pressure are key to driving change. Whether through petitions, social media, or contacting policymakers, everyone can play a role in shaping a fairer future for Malaysian families. Stay with Kini TV and Malaysia Kini for more updates. I'm Dania Garrison, reporting for Kini TV.